Hello and welcome to Tooshka Training. We're starting our A to Z, or the Reaper cookbook, for the software Reaper. It's a digital audio workstation or a DAW, whichever way you want to call it. We've seen some other guides, and they don't really cover the heavy customizing and so on of Reaper. So we're going to start at the beginning with an install, because there's even a couple of tips on the install that you need to know. So we're going to get right on with it. We're at the Reaper website. We're going to go to the download. We're going to download the latest version. Now, this is the latest stable version. There is a beta version that you can go and get involved with on the forum, but you'll have to join the forum and find out for yourself if you want to get involved in that. So I'm going to download the latest 64-bit version, like so. And while that's downloading, we're going to pop to the SWS extension website, code.google.com /p/SWS extension /. You can Google it, you'll find it straight away. Go to downloads and download the relevant version for you. The featured version is the stable version. Personally, I always like the pre-release because there's always some nice extras in that, and it's worth having the pre-release anyway. You can choose whether you want the featured or the pre-release. I always use the pre-release, so I'm going to download the pre-release X64 because I'm on Windows 8 64. Right. I'm going to close these web pages now. Those are the two things you need to do this tutorial that we're covering now, and this is to get you started with a fresh install of Reaper, and then various tutorials after that are going to customize it and make it our own version of Reaper. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Reaper like so. Double click it. Now, instead of actually doing a normal install, we're going to do a portable install. I'll explain this why later. It doesn't actually give you a destination folder. This is designed for installing to USB sticks and removable media, but we're going to use it for another reason. So we're going to go to Browse. We're going to go to Program Files. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a new folder. In this particular instance, I'm not going to make a new folder because I've already set up a new folder. This is my standard Reaper setup that is completely customized, and fits to me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very bland Reaper setup, the exact same setup that you would have when you start out, and we're going to customize it together. But for this tutorial, we're just going to cover the installation. So create your Reaper folder. Just call it Reaper. You can call it whatever you want, but I just call it Reaper. There's my Reaper tutorial folder, which is my bland Reaper install. Now I've got the proper destination folder here, but it's still a portable install. We click on next. Now, if you notice here, we're going to come back and look at these in a minute. But if you notice here, some of the additional functionality is blacked out, and that would be rewire and reroute ACO driver. You can't actually turn those on in a portable install. You don't want to lose that functionality, but we're going to fix that in a minute. So we're going to install as is, like so. It's that quick. We hit close. It's asking if we want to run Reaper now. We don't want to run Reaper now, so hit no. Right, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install Reaper again. I know this sounds like a mad thing, but it's a power tip that a lot of people don't know about. Now, instead of doing a portable install this time, we're going to use the destination folder which we used last time, which it's already found, which is Program Files. In your case, it'll be Reaper. In my case, it's dash tutorial, because as I say, it's my bland install. You're going to click Next. Make sure you haven't got a portable install tick this time. We don't want a portable install tick this time. I'm going to explain this in a moment. Now, when you come to it, you'll see the additional functionality here. You can actually turn rewire and reroute back on. Right, I'll explain some of this stuff. X64 Bridging is if you want to use 32-bit plugins in your 64-bit Reaper, because I'm running 64-bit version of Windows 8. That's what your bridging is for. But you've also got your rewire and your Rex here that bumps those up to X64 as well. Your control surface support, including OSE. Again, leave it on. It doesn't matter if you use it or not. It's actually not going to. All this stuff leave it all on. It's not going to slow the application down. I'm just explaining to you what it is. Media Explorer, leave it on. It's a great thing. We'll cover that more in a later tutorial. Probably part 2. We'll first show you that. CD ripping and burning, never used it, but always leave it on just in case I ever do need it. DDP export, leave it on. It doesn't do any harm to the application, just leave it all on. You can't strip Reaper down and make it any faster. It's already full speed with everything turned on. Rear mode is a great thing if you want to have, say you've got an old computer or an old laptop or something. You want to use it for extra processing power, you can connect it up via rear mode, and it will use the processor, it will use the system basically of the other computer to, you can offline effects to it. So you can say, all right, I'm gonna bump this reverb plugin over to that computer. And the great way it works is that you don't need a monitor or anything. The effect still shows on your master computer, which would be this computer that you're installing Reaper on now. All you have to make sure that you do is set up Reaper exactly the same on the slave computers as it is on the master computer with all your plugins and everything. As long as that's set up like that, then when you actually bang a plugin over to be processed on the slave computer, it will still appear as it is on the master computer, but the processing will be being done on the slave computers. So you've offlined a load of CPU work there straight over to another computer, which is it's a great way of working. Rewire, if you don't know what Rewire is a protocol invented by a company called Propellerheads, who make software called Recycle, they make Reason, and they make Rebirth. Basically, Rewire is a protocol where you can plug one application into another application. If you think of it as a pipeline, imagine the audio, say we take, for instance, Rebirth, which is a Propellerheads application. Rewire works with other stuff outside of Propellerheads, but I'm just using this particular example. Rebirth audio is now plumbed through a pipeline into Reaper. So when you press play in Reaper, the audio from Rebirth is actually coming into mixer channels inside Reaper itself. So it's basically like plugging an audio pipeline directly into Reaper. But one of the good things about Rewire is it actually has a transport protocol and can pass MIDI as well. So if it's a Rewire instrument, you could actually pass MIDI information directly from Reaper back to the instrument and play the instrument via MIDI. But also you've got the transport protocol. So if it's an application that's got a sequencer built in, like Rebirth, for instance, when you hit play in Reaper, you will find that the play plays perfectly in sync from Rebirth. So Rebirth is now playing perfectly in sync with what's going on in Reaper. The only thing you lose is that you can't save a single project. If you use Rewire to rewire two applications together, you have to save the project in the slave application and in the master application. Now, a slave application and a master application, the way they work, a master is the hub. A slave application always sends its audio to the master. That's how it works. A slave is sent to the master, and you can have multiple slaves. I've had a setup before where I had Renoise, Acid, Rebirth, and I believe it may have been Studio One or something, all plugged into Reaper at the same time, all running perfectly in sync. It's not the most CPU efficient way to work. It's not something I do all the time, but you know, in some circumstances, it's great. So that's what Rewire does. Now, Reroute is a fake ASIO driver. Now, if you don't know what ASIO is, ASIO was a standard. I think it stands for audio software or sound input output, something like that. Anyway, it was designed by Steinberg, people who created Cubase, and basically it's a layer that sits between your audio interface and your software. Your audio interface being your sound card, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's your Moto, your RME, even if it's a Sound Blaster, Creative, whatever, that's an audio interface. This ASIO driver sits between that hardware and the audio software that you're running. In this particular instance is Reaper, or it could be Cubase, or it could be any software that supports ASIO. The ASIO driver runs, and it has a direct low latency link to the hardware. By low latency, what I mean is, if you imagine that you have a drum kit that you're triggering via MIDI, latency is the amount of time from you pressing the key on your keyboard to you hearing the drum hit sound. That would be your audio latency. And obviously, the lower that is, the better, because you want it to sound like you're playing that instrument live. So ASIO brought the latency right down on sound cards, which is great. And a lot of applications now support ASIO. What rear route ASIO driver is a fake ASIO driver. So if you imagine you're running an application, say you're running a sequencer or a software synth, for instance. It isn't in VST, so you can't load it directly inside Reaper, and it doesn't support rewire that we talked about a minute ago, so you can't plumb it directly into Reaper. What the developers of Reaper did was created a fake ASIO driver, which is a brilliant thing. And now, so if this application that you want to plumb into Reaper actually supports ASIO, you can turn on the rear route ASIO driver, and rather than the audio being sent directly to your audio card, it's now sent to Reaper's ASIO driver. So if you think of that in terms of a pipeline again, the audio is going into the rear route ASIO driver, which is a pipeline that's plumbed directly into Reaper's mixer. So you can actually have channels from any ASIO supported software direct into Reaper's mixer. And then Reaper sends to your normal ASIO driver, which is supplied with your audio interface, and goes straight to your hardware and out to your speaker. So the route would be the application, let's say Linux sampler. Linux sampler pumped through the rear route ASIO driver into mixer channels inside Reaper, and then the audio goes from Reaper through the pipeline out to your audio interface. Very, very clever thing. Now, if you've got an audio interface that doesn't support ASIO, and you're having a bit of a latency issue, Google ASIO for All, the 4 being the number 4, ASIO for All. It's an ASIO driver that was designed, and it's free. It's donation where you can send him a donation if you like. I recommend you do if you do use it. Basically, you can run it on sound cards that don't support ASIO, and it will give you an ASIO driver for your sound card. So that's another great thing there and worth looking into. Right, we've covered the additional functionality. Customizations is stuff you don't even need to be bothered with. Don't worry about it. It's not going to slow Reaper down. Just leave it. Compressed file support is the files you're used to using. Leave them all there. Audio processing plugins, again, leave them all there. All you'll be doing is taking away capabilities if you remove these. You've got your algorithms for pitch shifting. Absolutely amazing rear plugins that come with Reaper that just, it's unbelievable that they actually come for free, to be perfectly honest. They're absolutely brilliant. Ninjam, great plugin. If you haven't used Ninjam yet, you can go online, enter a room, jam with people, and it's so clever the way it works. It kind of moves everything a bar out of sync, and because it's moved everything a bar out of sync, you have no latency between the performances. It's just people are literally exactly a bar behind you, and you can jam. It's great stuff. Rear stream, again, these are all things that you can check out in your own time. JS effects. When it says tons of effects, it's not joking. There's literally hundreds of them. Now, the only reason I'm covering this in more detail is because JS needs to be covered a little bit more in detail, because it's not a standard plugin system like VST or the old DirectX system. JS effects is compilable in the application itself. So if you think in terms of if there's a JS effects plugin, you can actually click on the edit button on the JS effects plugin, and it literally will open the code for that plugin. So you can modify the code for the plugin itself. So if you're a bit of a geek, you can change the plugin while you're actually in the application itself, which is absolutely amazing for geeks. I'm not a huge fan of it. I've created some myself when I needed quick fixes, but other than that, not something I actually worry about too much. VST is good enough for me. Right, so we've covered these options. We're going to hit install. The install took a lot longer than it usually would because I was talking. And now, because this is our second install where we didn't do the portable install, but we've installed over the original portable install, we can actually run it now. And the reason I'm running it now before installing SWS is because I actually wanted to show you something. And that would be, if we go to actions, we're just going to type resource, if I spell it correctly, like so. And then we're going to go to ignore SWS. I've already got it installed, but we're going to install it again in a minute just to show you how quick it is. Show Reaper resource path in Explorer, hit run. And now you'll notice that our Reaper resource path is program files Reaper tutorial. Now, if you hadn't done the portable install first and then installed over itself again, this is a power user trick. What happens is your resource files, which is a lot of pretty much all these folders, will end up on Windows 8. They're in program data. In Windows XP, they're in documents and settings, user application data, blah 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 blah. You want them all in the one folder, because there is times, quite regular times actually, when you're going to modify these, because when you modify a lot of these, you actually change the application heavily with Reaper. It's one of the great things about Reaper, and what a lot of our tutorials are based around is actually making Reaper fit you rather than you starting to fit the application, which is something that's gone on in the software world for years. Applications are what they are, and you work how the application works. Well, customization is coming heavily in the software world. Reaper's right at the forefront of this, and you make the application work how you want it to work. I've heard people say before, oh, Reaper's too hard to use, it took too long. Well, that's because they didn't do the full proper setups like we're about to show you in these next tutorials. The whole idea here is to completely customize it to fit you. I've heard people also say that, oh, I don't want to customize it, I just want to make music. Well, the thing is, it takes too long to customize and I'm wasting time, I just want to make music. You're not wasting time. What you're doing is you're customizing the application to work so fast that you will actually be making music and recording and mixing faster than you ever have in any other application, because the application will literally be completely configured to you, to no one else, just to you. Now, again, I've heard people say, oh, I don't really want to do this because when I go to somebody else's and they're using Reaper, the configuration is different and I won't know how to use it. And it's true. It was one of the caveats that I never liked, was that when I set up Reaper, it was a nightmare if I went to somebody else's. I work with a composer in our band, and I'd go to his. I couldn't use his Reaper because it was the default Reaper that I've now just installed to do these tutorials. I couldn't use it. But they added import and export configuration setup, and basically what that does is it allows you to set Reaper up how you want, save it as a configuration, which is a small file you can take on a USB. Or I just send it to him over the internet. When I go to his, I can load my configuration, do the edits that I needed to do or whatever I was doing, and then I just load his configuration straight back in. Bam, he's back on it and he's working his way. It's great, it's perfect, and no one can argue with that. Anybody who says it's a waste of time is really, really kidding themselves, because it makes your entire workflow so much faster. It really does. I mean, this is your default Reaper install. You've got various menus that are full of stuff that we're going to change all of this. As an example to show this, this is my full install of Reaper, and it doesn't look anything like that other Reaper we just looked at. Okay, so there's an example of that. Right, we're going to close Reaper here now quickly, and just to show how fast your Reaper install is normally, I'm going to install it again. The reason I'm going to do this is because you will be installing Reaper on a regular basis, whether it be weekly or bi-weekly or whatever. You will be reinstalling it, and that's not because Reaper is unstable and acts strange and you need to reinstall it. It's because they release on a rapid basis. Always worth installing the latest Reaper, because they always add little bug fixes and little actions and features. We'll talk more about actions later, that make the application faster to use and more user friendly. And it's a long ongoing process with Reaper, but they are rapid fire releases. You will find new releases a weekly, bi-weekly basis. But Reaper, there's a preference in there, and Reaper will remind you. It'll tell you if there's a new release, and you've got no worries with it. And I'll show you now how fast a new install is. Right, so you just click on the install, hit I agree. The destination folder will already be set, because now we've set it up by doing our portable install and then installing over the top. It's all done. Hit next. All your arrows are already set, because now even though we're doing a portable install now, Reaper has got a clever installer that even though we created a portable install, it now knows that we've created a portable install. So it will always put all the files in that folder for us, even though we haven't clicked on portable install. It will always put the files where they need to be. So we just hit install and we're done. We are done. That's us. We're there. We're good to go. Right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to install SWS. I downloaded the X64 version. If you're running 32, then make sure you get the right version. If you're on OS X, make sure you get the right version there too. Hit I agree. It'll find the destination folder. Hit next. Keep the extension and the grooves. Extension you have to keep because it's the actual base of the entire thing, but keep the grooves as well. It's FNG grooves. I think most a whole bunch of them were created by Subs, who's if you don't know Subs, he's a madman, does a lot of presets and various for various companies, very clever lad. The Groove plugin itself was created by FNG. Keep it, it's a great thing. The extensions themselves, Xenakaios, SWS, Padre, Jeffos, FNG. If I'm forgetting anybody, there's a bunch of them, and they're all clever lads. They've done some amazing things, and they add more things to Reaper on a weekly basis than even the developers of Reaper do. It's an amazing system. Get it installed by hitting the install button and pressing close, and that's it, you're done. We're going to boot up Reaper again. Now, I've heard people talk some rubbish about these add-ons. Now, these add-ons are made with an SDK API that was created by the developers of Reaper itself. These are not hacks. Well, some of them are hacks, but they work. As Xenakaios will tell you that some of his were specific hacks because they couldn't be done. So he hacked them in and they work brilliantly. These are native to the application. Once you install that extension plugin, it adds all these new features. And when I say it adds all these new features, I'm not messing, right? Look at the amount of features adding that tiny little installer that we just installed adds. And I'm not talking about nothing features here. Some of these are huge feature sets, absolutely huge, and the list is going on and on and on and on. I'm not even going to go to the end, right? We're going to cover a lot of the SWS stuff, because a lot of the techniques we come up with and a lot of the things we use to make the interface better and so on are from the SWS pack. So that's the first tutorial. That's got you installed. You've now got your Reaper installed into a resource monolithic folder, if you like. It's all in that one single folder. You got your SWS installed. Actually, before we close this tutorial out, one thing I do want to cover ever so quickly. I'm in Windows 8. Now, Windows 8, doesn't matter whether you turn off the UAC stuff or whatever, creating this this single folder with all your resources in is not going to work properly. Because you have to create admin rights, and if you want to download something, the installer has to be run as admin and so on. So a quick workaround that I used, that some people say isn't safe, but I actually don't care because it makes my life a lot easier and I've had no problems at all with it being safe, is to right click on the Reaper folder, hit properties, go to security, and we're just going to pop down to administrators, hit edit, and then we're going to change administrators here. I've already changed it, obviously, as you can see. You're going to change it to full control, and you're going to press apply. This will actually disappear. You right click, bring properties, come back again, and do the exact same thing for users again. And now you've completely opened up and give yourself full administration rights on that folder and bypass the UAC completely, which is something that I would do straight away if I was you. But it's a choice. It's up to you. You don't have to you don't have to do the install the way I did it. It's a pro tip that we've been using since the XP days. And two, you don't have to turn UAC off or use the admin rights or whatever. You can just install and have your files in various places and use the open resource folder if that's the way you want to work. That's an action. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. This is the first of many, obviously. The next one, we're going to cover a bit more customizing stuff, and we'll see you on that tutorial.